Hey friends, David here. No Elise today because I'm actually recording this episode the day before we post it. Today's episode is with Orlando Mayorga, but you can call him Chili. He currently works with the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative out of the Lieutenant Governor's office in the state of Illinois, but I met him while facilitating a circle training at Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation in Back of the Yards. As you're about to hear, Chili's an amazing guy and he's full of love and joy, and that's a lot of what I need, especially on this day after the guilty on all counts verdict came down in the Derek Chauvin trial. So I'm going to get right into the conversation, check the show notes for all the announcements about workshops and events, and here's our conversation with Chili. Welcome, Chili. Who are you?
Son,
Who are you?
brother,
Who are you?
peacemaker,
Who are you?
servant,
Who are you?
student,
Who are you?
teacher,
And finally, who are you?
humble.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of those things. You're the first person who's ever answered all of those with one word, and it's beautiful. We get to unpack so much more of that in the next little bit, but it's always good to check in. So, to the fullest extent that you want to answer on this day, April 21st, 2021, how are you?
I'm feeling okay, man. It was definitely an emotional and mental struggle last week with everything related to, the young boy getting killed in Little Village. It's been going on for a little while, but I think last week was a culmination of so many things going on. And, yesterday was, the same, reflective state that I was in regarding, the verdict of, the murder of George Floyd. And it's just a lot going on, man. And amidst that, it's some joys too. It's that emotional roller coaster that I think all people seem to encounter on a day-to-day basis. It's just, for me, the ups and the lows been really profound this week, man.
Yeah. How have you been taking care of yourself in the midst of all that?
Just talking to people, man, being around people that I believe are just in community, that are in solidarity, and that are of the mindset that we should imagine a better world, right? And people that can actually be counted on to produce actions to see that world happen. That's always a motivating factor. And I mean, being outside and taking a walk in the sun, the Peace March that happened on Sunday in Little Village, that really fed my spirit, man, to be able to see the mother just being in that march with us, and to see people really supporting her, because I cannot imagine just how much she's going through with everything being directed at and against her. Just to be able to show her that she has people that are with her and that are not there to judge her, that are not there to make the situation worse on her or the family, but to show her that we are here, and we're happy to have you with us.
Yeah, there are a ton of people that you are in community with, right? You are now working with the Illinois Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, right, out of the Lieutenant Governor's office, where restorative justice for people who are coming out of incarceration is, what your focus is. But you've been doing restorative justice work for a minute, probably before you even knew the words restorative justice. So, from your perspective, how did you get started?
I mean, I think I got started knowing about restorative justice as it was shown to me by people around me. I was incarcerated at the age of 17. I had a particular perspective and view about what that experience would be being incarcerated at such a young age, being around people that up until that moment I was conditioned to think were, the worst of the worst, or, the narrative of big fish eat little fish and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And very early, I found that narrative was untrue. I ran into a lot of good people that took me under their wing, that mentored me, that became family to me, that became, those father figures that were mostly missing from my childhood, that taught me how to read the world in a critical way, right? And really learn what it would be like to be in community with people, man, even in places where people don't think that community can exist.
Yeah, and this is while you were locked up. I'm curious to the extent that you want to share. What were the conditions that led up to that situation?
So, I mean, I think the conditions begin in early in childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a home where, substance abuse and domestic violence was a constant, right? I had a mother who loved me and who I know loved me, but she herself dealt with her own trauma in ways that made me an angry, scared young person. And I think a lot of the choices that I made, even as early as 5, 6 years old, just compounded to, making me just as angry and scared as a teenager. So I gravitated toward. I don't want to call it a street life, man. That in itself has a negative connotation, and I'm always trying to be mindful of the language, man. I grew close with people who had shared experience, right? Who themselves were looking for some collective comfort, right? So my friends who also may have had issues with their own trauma, and we made some bad decisions together, right? I was incarcerated at an early age in juvenile detention on a couple of occasions. I still did not, quote unquote, learn my lesson. I chose to stay engaged in things that were destructive to myself, right? And at the age of 17, man, I decided that, to protect myself with a weapon, I took the life of another teenager. And that's one of the things that I'll never forget this brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I try to honor him as much as I can whenever I speak, because I do know his name, and I honor him by saying his name, Francisco Arellano. He was a young man that lost his life as a result of me using a gun. Um, and I'm not going to justify in the way that it was used, because there's no excuse um, to ever try to, for me, to justify the use of a weapon in the case of taking another person's life. So because of that act, the consequence of it is that I spent 20 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, beginning in Cook County Jail at the age of 17. And again, those are the things that led to me being in a place of isolation, depression, and all the realities that I grew up with as a child, man.
Yeah. And even, well, first, thank you for sharing. Um, I know that is so much a part of your work, and I think it's important for people to know, you know, the full story to the extent that you want to share, right? And even in those spaces of isolation, right, like prison, jails, right, detention centers are not welcoming, warm places for you to, where people are often not incentivized to heal or learn lessons, right? But even in those spaces, you were sharing that you connected with folks who helped introduce these ideas of restorative justice through their mentorship, through their teaching, through their just being in community with you. Speak more on those people who did that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first person that I identified as a mentor was this brother named Rodney Harrison, African American brother who on the West Side who seemed to be one of those people that you consider woke, right? He used to have me read books. Like, I knew how to read, but he taught me how to read in a way that applied to the way the world works, right? Um, there's a quote I remember running across one day, and somebody may have told it to me. It's not just about reading the word, but reading the world as it relates to the word, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what he did for me, man. He had me read these books, and I remember the first book he had me read was called Shogun. It was a 1,500 page book that I at first didn't want to read, but it ended up being one of the best books I'd ever read, right? Uh, but the manner in which it created dialogue, right, discourse around what I was reading, helped me to develop a different mindset about how the systems work, right? How systems of education, how systems of oppressions, the prison system, the police, all these different things that go into this notion of white supremacy, right? So in that book, it's a European ship that is shipwrecked in Japan, and lo and behold, this European person ends up becoming a samurai who leads a rebellion against Japanese government, and he becomes a hero, right? But he broke down the book in a way that let me understand how these concepts end up becoming internalized in us, right? Like, why does it take a white hero to save the people that really were likely not in need of a savior, right? Why couldn't the savior come from within their own people? And those are the conversations that used to happen. At the time, they weren't conversations that I could really engage in, but those were, I believe, the early seeds that were planted, that grew and were able to take, uh, I want to say take flight, but that grew into the person that I am today, right? And I owe that to him, and I owe it to many brothers that I ran into as a young person in jail, and as a person who grew up in the prison system. So
Yeah.
I want to say that along with that, man, is sharing meals with people that um, we condition ourselves to think are our enemies out here, right? To be able to receive the offer of a collect call, right? Hey, bro, do you need to call your family? And this being a person from the opposite side of the neighborhood, for our parents to share carpools to come visit us, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
all those different things, man, that flipped the narrative, that flipped the script on the way that I thought going in very early, just helped me to see that these other brothers that I was in prison and jail with were my other me. And I know we're gonna go into that later, man. And yeah,
We can go there right now.
yeah, man, I'm recognizing my humanity in other people, bro. That's before I even again learned this poem that I know I had shared with you in La Catch, right? You
Mm-hmm.
You are my other me, bro. That's what I was able to learn, um, still in my teenage years, while I was incarcerated at Cook County Jail, man.
And so, like, while you're very early in your time locked up, you started to move and learn a different way than you had been. And I would like to think if you had been let out at that time, things would have been so much greater, right? Because now the world would have had 22-year-old Orlando running around doing this work instead of having to wait all this time, right? And I don't want to like discount all the work that you were able to do inside. We're going to get into that a little bit, but like prisons aren't always places where people learn in that kind of way. But you were someone who was able to learn and grow from that experience, and it didn't take you 20 years to do it, right? If people are given the love and the learning was missing from them that put them in the situations that caused them to make bad choices that were harmful to themselves and to their communities, right? That's how we abolish prisons, right? It doesn't take being locked up. Sometimes it takes being removed from your community, right? But that doesn't look like 26th in California, right? It doesn't look like downstate. It looks like being in a place where people are providing you with resources and love and education, right? That's what this accountability process is, right? Of course, it's acknowledging the harm, but like, what are the things that you need to do, the skills that you need to build, the perspectives that you need to learn to grow and be a better person, a person who is recognizing themselves in others and being for others. And you were able to do that so early in your time inside. How did you continue to exercise that and teach others while you're inside?
Well, taking advantage of the resources that were around me, right? In Cook County Jail, man, the only thing you're going to be able to, oh, at the time, the only thing I could have earned education wise was my GED. And,
Mm-hmm.
just the way the universe works, man. I was technically wasn't even supposed to get that opportunity, but it took again a person that um, that traditionally you would not be introduced to coming to me. So when you come into the system, they do an assessment, and one of the questions that they had asked was, had I ever been an ESL student? And yeah, when I was a shorty, kindergarten, and first grade, I was in ESL school. So because of that, there was a teacher that came to see me thinking I didn't know English that was going to teach me English, but we ended up making that connection, right? That human connection. He ended up saying, you know what, I'm not going to give up on you just because you already know English. Lo and behold, he provided the opportunity to get my GED. But more than that, um, we developed a friendship, man. Like this dude actually would visit my mother, my father, my family. She would check up on my family. My family would go to his school in the north side. And I think that's what's missing, right? That human element in these spaces, man. For people the that are not incarcerated to affirm you and to value you as a human being. That's what this old man did. This old Puerto Rican brother did. Um, and just provided that reminder, man, that despite the greatest, mistake you ever made in your life, I'm not going to treat you based on that mistake. You're more than that mistake. And he used to tell me that, like, who takes the time to tell you that other than, your mother or your family? Like everything about the system intentionally creates these wedges even between those relationships that are most valuable to you by making it hard to stay in contact with them. But to have that presence in a space where you would think it wouldn't happen, it helped. But it makes me think about how much that is missing in communities before people have to deal with getting caught up in the system, right? What if people like that were readily available and given the opportunity, uh, not only to care for people, but to make ends meet of being in care of community and of people? And I think that's what's missing, right? That's why I made it my survivor mission to try to be that, right? To try to come home, and at first it would be to volunteer because I thought I was going to be fixing air conditioners or cutting grass and growing flowers and growing vegetables, right? Because those were the skills that I had. But I was provided this opportunity to start mentoring young people, to be an example, to not tell you what to do, but to show you how I'm doing it, right? And to provide spaces for learning and teaching, man. That's the whole thing. Like being able to understand that this dynamic of teacher student is a reciprocal one, right? Like you're not the only one teaching. You're learning alongside with these young people that are in the community, man.
You've just entered your role with the Lieutenant Governor's office, but you and I met when you were working out of Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation in this mentorship role. How did that opportunity come to you?
So prior to my release, I was involved in this education program called the Education Justice Project through, the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. So shout out to Dr. Rebecca Ginsburg for bringing that and creating that opportunity for people to, uh, to take higher learning, post-secondary education, whatever you want to call it, to really learn in a humanizing, liberatory way, right? Uh, that's what they did, man. They created spaces not only for us to, earn post-secondary education credits for the bachelor's degree, but they also provided us with spaces to be creative, right? One of the programs that came about out of uh, a few brothers that um, were interested in dissecting violence, right? And learning and doing research on violence. Out of that research, they ended up coming up with a peer support group called CAVE, Community Anti-Violence Education Group, uh, which was a trauma-informed, peer-led peer support group, right? We learned about trauma. We ended up choosing a curriculum called Self, Safety, Emotion, Loss, and Future, written by Dr. Sandra Bloom, and applied it to our environment where people could come together and talk about those early adverse childhood experiences and how to get it out of our own way, how to not be our own enemy when it comes to our response to anger, our response to sadness, and to develop an emotional regulatory uh, system for ourselves that'll keep us safe, right? So again, fast forward, I was in that group, met a lot of good people. When I came home, based out of that social capital that that space created, I was introduced by Father Kelly. We had a conversation. I didn't know it was a job interview at the time, but at the end of that conversation, he asked me when would I like to start. And yeah, a week after I came home, I was given the opportunity that I never would have thought possible. Again, my intention was to come home and fix air conditioners or cut grass, right? So I went into that position not knowing exactly what I was going to do, but being again in community with people, I think had already given me the experience that I needed to be a carer of people, not just young people, but just people in general, you know, and I started as a mentor coordinator, providing mentoring for young people. We did our cave circles. We started our cave circles at the center, peace circles, and yeah, just providing those spaces where people can process what it is that they go through on a daily level and how it's all related to everything that we've been through, right? That trauma that keeps us in that loop of constant decision making that doesn't produce the best consequence for us, right? And a year later, from doing that work, I continued at Precious Blood. I expressed to Father Kelly that my passion is reentry, right? Being there intentionally for people coming home from prison or juvenile detention. I became a reentry case manager. A year after that, opportunities started growing at Precious Blood. I was given the position of director of reentry, where now it was possible for us to realize the conversations we had on the inside about having a team out here that reflected the team that we had in there. Now at the center, you'll find that people like Joseph Mapp are there, Phil Jackson's there, and these are brothers that I used to sit in prison classrooms talking about what it would be like for us to be out here, still connected and engaged, doing the work together. That is the rewarding part of this work, man. Like to be able to take a conversation and to now see it having materialized, well, that still gives me goosebumps, right? Because it shows me that when people are in line with the universe, right, with what the universe wants out of us, the universe makes those opportunities happen, man. And whether it be God, whether it be Allah, the universe, whatever people want to believe, man, I choose to believe there's a higher power at work in everything that we do, including our ancestors, you know?
Hmm. I'm pretty sure I met you like that week or the week after you started at the center, right? Where us and Pam, I think who's episode number 7 of this podcast, we're going through this circle training where you introduced me, right, to this idea of In La Ketch by sharing that poem. One of the things that really stood out to me in that moment was the depth to which like you had thought about all these things without like having I'll say like quote unquote formal training, right? When did you learn the word restorative justice?
When I came home,
Yeah. That's so funny. And I really love highlighting that, you know, the words restorative justice were popularized, right, by Howard Zinn starting in like late 70s, 80s. But, you know, this work is within all of us, right? In so many different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I'm a RJ practitioner trained by so and so in such and such fashion, right? When we're living into these principles, right, of interconnection, reflecting, like seeing the reflection of ourselves and others, right, from inlakesh, mitakuyasan, ubuntu, right, all these ideas exist, like you're saying, with from our ancestors, right, and living those values is what really allows us to be in community in a good way with each other. And that's what this is all about. You know, you've done a lot of work at the center, but like we shared, you've just transitioned into this role with the lieutenant governor's office. What? How'd that happen? What are you doing now with that opportunity?
Man, that's one of the words that came up in our exercise in the beginning was humble, right? Like I recognize I'm not doing this on my own, right? And it's not just a higher power at work that I believe in this, man. It's everybody around me. It's everybody that I've learned from. It's every connection that I've been able to make in a meaningful way, and even in a not so meaningful way, right? Not everybody that I've met has become an all-encompassing relationship where we know each other and keep in touch with each other. But those meaningful relationships, the long-lasting ones, are what made it possible for me to be here. I always make sure to shout out the people that created this foundation for people like me to come into this work and be able to flourish. Johnny Page, Rob Garrity, Agustin Torres, um, Elfego Nunez, like all these brothers that came home prior to me coming home, right? And setting up the foundation and representing us, right? Representing people that are incarcerated, that are formerly incarcerated in a way that lets people know that these notions that you have about people who are formerly or currently incarcerated are false. All we need is the opportunity, and given that opportunity, we'll make the most of it. We'll make the right choices so that it's not so much that we keep our circle tight, but more so to honor the responsibility that we have for those coming after us, right? And I think that's part of our ancestors, right? That's part of the belief of the healing diagram, right? And
Right, yeah. The medicine wheel.
yeah, the medicine wheel, and also part of that is the notion that this is not our land. This we're borrowing this land from future generations, right? And that is the value that has been instilled by us, especially by Johnny Page, to not worry about the people that are already in this space doing this work, but what about the brother that's looking and hoping that he gets that opportunity and making sure that that opportunity is there when he comes home or she comes home, right? So yeah, I don't know if I got a little long-winded, but you're absolutely right, man. This restorative justice um, word exists in all of us. It's always been there, and it's part of the universal truth, right? That human beings want to be in right relationship with one another. They want to be in healthy, caring relationships, and I believe that, man. Um, yeah.
You didn't answer the question about how you got connected with the lieutenant governor's office and what you're doing in that role.
Again, not because of me, it's because of a relationship that I built 3.5 years ago when I first got hired at Precious Blood. I met this brother named Yaakov Delaney, who is currently my supervisor now. He himself is a formerly incarcerated person. He was doing community organizing work, policy related work for another organization. We met, we clicked, and we kept in touch since then. We've been doing other work together, so that when this opportunity came up, he asked if I was interested. And to be honest, at first I said no. And I said no because there's this um, there's this thing within me and a lot of people that come home related to loyalty. And I never, ever in my mind thought that I would ever leave Precious Blood because I had put it in my head and I had help from people putting it in my head that I would one day be executive director of Precious Blood. And yeah, man, that was my intent. That's been the nurture, and the fostering of that Father Kelly has been supporting since I started. So when this opportunity came up, I told Jacob, man, you know what? Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. I talked to Father Kelly, and I posed it to him, and he's like, man, you'd be silly not to take this opportunity. Like, how many people um, get this opportunity based on the experiences that you had? And I appreciated that, because it showed me that he would never um, take away anything that can be of benefit to my growth, not only as knowledge base wise, but as a person, right? So yeah, I talked with him. I counseled with my team, with Rayfel and Joseph, and they were the same way, bro. Like who better to be in those spaces than somebody we know actually cares about what it is that we're trying to remove as far as the barriers and the obstacles that these systems create, right? So I considered it, and I went back and forth with other people, and yeah, I ended up choosing to take this position, but it was based on the opportunity that was created by another person, right? Not been for him reaching out, which is again that community that we have, right, of looking out for one another. Um, it would have never happened.
Yeah, definitely. And so, what is the work that you, Yakov, and the rest of the team are engaged in now?
So Yakov is director of the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative. I'm serving as reentry policy coordinator. And basically, our role is to focus on everything holistically through the lens of reentry, right? Like, what would it take? What policies need to be changed? What barriers and obstacles need to be removed that keep people like us in the state of second class citizenship, right? And maybe we won't achieve, that macro change that would would not continue to stigmatize people with records or people with convictions or people that are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, but just to chip away and show people that we're no different than anyone else out there. Like, yes, we made a mistake, um, some very terrible, but that's not the totality of who we are. And yeah, to chip away at that narrative and to chip away at that system of mass incarceration, not from people doing it for us, but for us doing it for ourselves, right? Having the people that are closest to the problem being that solution, right? And really showing people that we can do this, and that we could do it very well.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I'm thinking about how so much of my work is on the proactive side, right? How do we educate people upfront about restorative justice practices so we're never having to call the police, involve systems of punishment, right? It's so important to remember that there are people who are currently impacted by those systems that need those skills, those tools, those resources, those policies to be favorable to them in order to restore on the other end. What are some of the things that you're really excited? Oh, I don't know what you can talk about, but what are some of the things that you're really excited to be working on in this new role?
Well, I mean, restoratively, um, just making sure that people have the same resources that were available to me, uh, at a multi level, right? Unless you're a particular uh, carceral institutions, you're not going to get the benefit of having a post-secondary education program, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not going to benefit from an education program that actually values you as a human being, uh, because of the lack of care involved. And I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna in any way name any institutions, right? But some institutions have better programming available than others. not every institution has a restorative justice, trauma informed care type program like CAVE, right? That was developed, created, and 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 made possible by formerly or by currently incarcerated people for currently incarcerated people, right? So how do we replicate that? How do we make it easier for people to, get IDs or to stay connected with their families? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we make it easier for people to not have to deal with registering on a murder registry for the rest of your natural life, right?
Mhm.
Um, how do we become better caring human beings for those that we may consider not deserving of it? And that's the sad part, man, because even within our own communities, right, of formerly and currently incarcerated people, we tend to other one another, right, based on whatever mistake you made, and those divisions are what make it hard for people out here to buy into the idea that we should all be embracing people in a way that loves and cares on people, as opposed to excluding people while including others. You know what I mean? And that's what I hope to try to do a better job at within the power that or within this privilege that I have now, to not be doing the inclusion by exclusion type approach, right? Because it defeats the purpose of what abolition is. And that's why I also want to talk about the misconceptions of what abolition is, when it comes to destroying something or dismantling something. I think that's the fear that people have. But along with that is the other part, right? The building, the creating something new and imagining something beautiful that that is based and that grows a community, man. And people tend to ignore that, and I don't know why. Because if you don't, then it's definitely going to make it that much more difficult for you to imagine a world without prisons, a world or a community that doesn't need constant policing and surveillance. Um, yeah, because that's what we've been conditioned to believe.
Yeah, and you know, you are. This is the first podcast that you've been on, right?
Yeah,
And you have already achieved, my podcaster dream of interviewing Angela Davis. You just had that conversation last week, right? And we'll link that into the description for folks who want to check that out. But you were talking to her about this idea of, right, abolition is about not just abolishing and dismantling, but this rebuilding. And there's so many different there's so many different facets to that, right? Both the reentry things and the proactive things that we need to be doing. Right, because people who aren't getting these resources in prison, like, aren't necessarily going to come out ready to be contributing members of society, if they didn't have those resources that you had. Like, you were talking about how, the what was it, the education justice project, right, provided you with those resources, but not everybody has those. What are the, I don't, and I know that you are in some ways still connected to that project. That's how you got to interview Dr. Davis. How did, well, one, I'm curious, like, how that came about for you, but, like, what are some of the work that they're doing right now?
so yeah, EJP is engaged in a lot of different, even campaigns. The Freedom to Learn campaign. I'm not sure if people are familiar with the censoring of certain knowledge in certain books within institutions. So there was an issue that arose a couple of years ago where institutions were pretty much book burning. They were getting rid of books that uh, that were and are still instrumental in developing a critical consciousness of systems. So they were removing books from the EJP library related to, critical pedagogy, to race and understanding race, to issues of prison abolition, right? And they were removing these books without really giving notice about as to the why. So they have this security and safety of the institution veil or umbrella that so many people fall under. So yeah, the Freedom to Learn campaign is doing not only amazing work in making sure that those types of injustices are addressed, but also finding ways to build collaboration and to expand the ally base when it comes to making sure that no injustice around education happens in Illinois. The again, EJP was instrumental in passing out and first uh, collecting funds and distributing collecting funds and using those funds to provide hand sanitizer, soap, uh, PPE equipment, whether it be masks, gloves, to institutions around the state, so that people that were incarcerated would have some form of protection during this pandemic. Um, Again, making scholarships available not only for people that are formerly incarcerated, but for our families, and even for the families of those that are IDOC correctional officers, right? So all those things, and I don't want to diminish anything else that they're doing, but off the top of my head, the only other thing that comes to mind is making instructional videos for people that are going to be released, walking them through the process of what it may be like to get an ID, to deal with a warrant that may keep you from being released, to what it may be like for you to be released and you have, this worry about being deported. So also extending services and support for those being deported to Central and Southern America is something that EJP is doing, and man, there's really no uh, border that seems to be holding the service and support that EJP is providing. And so, big shout out to EJP, all the volunteers, all the staff, and especially our matriarch Rebecca Ginsburg.
Yeah, for sure. Um, there's and at the event that they hosted at the gala, their fundraiser, they hosted last week. You got to interview Angela, the matriarch of the prison abolition movement, along with Ruth Wilson Gilmore and so many others. Right? What was that like, bro?
Man, you know what's funny? That was not supposed to happen for me. The brother that was supposed to interview Angela Davis for some reason backed out at the last minute. So within a week, an email was sent to me. I was asked, man, could you do this last minute? I was like, yes, but I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna be nervous as hell. And sure enough, I submitted some questions that to Rebecca that I wanted to ask, and some of those questions were we condensed them because we only had like 10, 15 minutes of the interview to do. And sure enough, man, it happened, man. And that again is gonna be one of the highlights of my life, man, because I never ever would have thought that I would meet Angela Davis, let alone interview her, man. And yeah, she's been instrumental not only to myself, but to many, many people through her work and through her writing, man.
Yeah, for sure. And like I appreciate how you slid in at the end. Like, and when you come to Chicago, make sure you make your way down to the Precious Blood Center and hang out with all of us. We'd love to have you. So, kudos to you on that. You've been doing this work, knowing the word restorative justice for a couple years. You've been doing restorative justice work as we broadly define it, for much of the last 20 years. What has been like an oh shit moment where you've messed up, and what have you learned from it
Related to the work,
related to the work? Yeah.
I think just understanding the balance that it takes professionally and personally with relationships. A lot of us that are coming home are genuine friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a boundary that exists professionally, right? So I think the hardest thing for me has been to create a balance and and to have to respect that and honor that, because I never want to be placed in a position where I do more harm than good, based on our friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So um, yeah, being restorative, but also being mindful um, that there are policies and guidelines that no matter what um, will always dictate the level of engagement that you can have with a person. And I think those guidelines are there for safety reasons of organizations, but making sure that they're respected in that way um, so that there's no further harm done. And I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, is there a specific story that comes to mind?
And now thinking about it, I think the most difficult thing for me in this work was the first loss of one of our young people that I was really close to. And I think
Mm.
I'm avoiding talking about it because it still hurts, right? Like, and that's part of that trauma, right? That no matter what you do, it's always gonna be there, man. But I be missing this brother, and it's crazy because we just celebrated his birthday last week. Not his, yeah, his birthday, man, or his anniversary. And and man, this kid was a good kid, man. And And man, that's the most difficult part of the work, bro. To develop meaningful relationships with a person, and then the next day they're gone, bro. Because he taught me a lot, and I was so proud of the way that he would teach others at such a young age to care for people. Like he used to work at the center, right? Yeah. Whenever he got his paycheck, he would cash it and he would give Father Kelly $30, 30, 20, for 50 sometimes, so that Father Kelly could put it on his phone to collect calls from people or to send people money that were incarcerated. On the weekends, he would ask me to go take him to Cook County Jail to visit his friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, who does?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that there are people who do that. But I know it's something I wasn't doing at his age. You know what I'm saying? Not just because I was locked up, but I don't think it would have been something I would have been doing. And for him to be doing that, right? To maintain those connections, to be intentional about everything that he was doing to keep people encouraged and to keep people supported. Man, that was a big hit, man, and it messed with me a lot, man.
Do you want to put his name into this space?
Huh?
You want to put his name into this space?
Brandon Powell, uh,
Mm.
G. Paw. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, he's. I mean, that just shows you how much he's loved, man. Because if I'm sitting here still reminiscing and reflecting on him, bro, you could just imagine how these little brothers are having to deal with that pain along with all the pains that they do on a day-to-day basis, losing more and more friends, man.
Yeah. I mean, I framed the question as like what's been the oh shit and like the mistakes, but maybe the other way to frame it is, as you've been doing this work, what's a really big lesson that you've learned? One of the things that's coming out for me is like you talk about boundaries for yourself. How do you navigate that? Like I don't think they're like clear cut rules, right?
Man, and that's still trying to figure that out, bro. Like boundaries between wellness and professional stuff, right? Like, and it's like I still ain't figured it out, and I don't think I'll figure it out anytime soon, bro. Because I just love doing things that bring people together, that build community, bro. I get a really deep sense of fulfillment from that, man. So when people say wellness and then they say they're gonna disconnect and go to a beach somewhere. Like I've tried to do that, but then I just end up being on a beach somewhere thinking about, man, I wonder what his brother's doing. I wonder if he's okay. Let me text him real quick. You know what I'm saying? Um, because I think that's part of our humanity, man. And I think it's been working for me up to this point. I haven't yet experienced the burnout concern, but I have experienced things that I never experienced before, right? I remember when I first came home, um, I had heard about, a brother um, accidentally dying, jumping off a porch, getting chased by the police. And and I didn't realize just how much all these different things were affecting me until I was driving to Precious Blood from home. And man, I just started shaking and crying uncontrollably, bro. But I talked to friends, you know what I'm saying? They told me, like, look, bro, you're moving way too fast to the point where you're not processing what it is that your joys are and what it is that's affecting you in not so joyous ways. So that was the best advice. So I guess the balance is that making sure to stay in tune with what I'm feeling and how it's affecting my body, which is self 101, right? Like making sure you pay attention to the signs that your body's giving you in order to maintain your wellness. I think that's one of the boundaries that I was instructed to do by one of my best friends and brothers, Johnny Page, right? Like, and Augustin Torres and Father Kelly and Joe, like everybody, bro. Like, I got a good network of people that support me, bro, and I couldn't be like more humble and more privileged and just more happy to have so many good people around me that keep me supported, man.
Absolutely. You're well loved. You give it back. And there's only, you know, hopefully 40, 50 more years to go. What are some of the ways that you want to continue to grow in this work? One, I know you're about to start a master's program in public policy, right?
Yeah, I was accepted to the University of Chicago's Crown Family School of Social Service Administration uh, at yeah U Chicago, man, and I'm looking forward to just learning, adding to my knowledge base, building more networks of communication with people, and hopefully using those same connections to expand more opportunities for other people coming home, man. Like we have this thing called the school to prison pipeline, and people have been talking about it in different states. I think California actually does a good job of addressing that by providing more pathways from prison to college. I think the program is called Project Rebound in Cali, but doing something like that over here, like how do we get more scholars, more academic students that are incarcerated and providing that pathway straight into school, into universities like U Chicago, like UIC, DePaul, Northwestern, because I think the time is right, man. The conversation, this word reentry is like Coca Cola right now, right? Everybody knows about it. Everybody wants to get involved with it. You know what I'm saying? So um, and again, there are good people already doing the work. Shout out to the Prison and Neighborhoods Art Project. Shout out to EJP, because I believe those are the trailblazers right now that have been doing this work and trying to do that work here in Illinois.
You've talked about how restorative justice has been so much of what you're doing professionally. How has it been healing for you?
I mean, it's been healing to me because it's in line with what I believe is my mission in life, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so I think in that way, it's healing. It's a way of wellness for myself, um, because it gives me a purpose that is beyond me, right? And is beyond this narrative of you should do you, right? Or I'm gonna do me. Nah, it's about doing we. So I guess in that way, that's how it's healing me because, as I told you earlier, man, like my healing may have been an individual healing that I needed, but it didn't happen as a result of myself. It happened as a collective, and like healing in spaces with one another, and understanding that interconnectedness is what's needed for all of us to heal inside, to not make it seem like we have to heal in isolation, right? But to be open to 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 receiving the healing support from others as they're healing too, bro. And I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but that's the way that I have healed. I have healed as a result of others healing with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think I was asking more along the lines of, when you go into jail or prison, like there's disconnection between you and people in your life. How has restorative justice or the framework of restorative justice been helpful in making those repairs or that healing?
with other people that are incarcerated.
No, like your family, the people who you were disconnected from
Uh,
when you went inside.
I think it's given me a better understanding of knowing that people are who they're gonna be, right? So one of the things that was introduced to me about the formal aspects of restorative justice at the center is radical hospitality, right? Um, Accepting people for who they are and how they come, right? Yeah, there's going to be tension there, especially when it's related to family, but understanding who they are and being okay with who they are. The fact that they're family is going to make it easier, anyways. I think the tension is that those that you love the most are the ones that can hurt you the most. But again, never letting that get to the point where it's beyond repair. And I think for me, that's what it's done for me, that it's never too much, or it can never be too, there can never be a degree of harm that cannot be healed. Uh, just being that accompaniment for people, man. Like my brothers are hurting. I know that. My family has been hurting for as long as I've been locked up. For before I got locked up, and they're still dealing with their trauma. But I guess being that source of level headedness, even when it's hard to keep that level headedness, I think it's made it easier for them to know who I am and how to be in community, even with me. Even though we're family, and you would think we're supposed to be in community, that's not always the case. But um, yeah, to be that centering presence, I think, has been helpful for my family, man.
Yeah.
One thing earlier that you had asked me about, what has been the hardest thing, the most difficult thing for me professionally, or that
Hmm.
oh shit moment.
Yeah.
It's saying no, bro. Like I everything that we do in these spaces it's always going to seem important, and saying no has put me in situations where it's cost me my health, right? Like not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, or eating too much, right? Um, but that old shit moment is that, bro. Like understanding that, oh shit, this may be affecting me more than I thought. That's been my uh-oh moment. Um, and I think it's happened on multiple occasions, man. But you learn from that, and I've learned more and more uh, throughout this professional experience.
We're about to get into the questions that I ask everybody. You ready? In your own words, what is restorative justice?
I think restorative justice is just a matter of wanting to be in right relationship with people and healthy relationships. And if something happens to fracture that relationship, focusing on how to repair it in a way that supports everybody involved, man. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is the gist to me of what this is, man. To just repair harm and to stay in community with one another based on mutual respect, mutual care, and mutual love for the community that you are from.
Yeah. You get to sit in circle with four people, living or dead. Who are they? And what's the question that you ask the circle?
You know, it's funny because I had this thing that I was gonna have a tattoo of my own Mount Rushmore. So I would want to say Paulo Freire.
Uh huh.
He's one of my biggest instructors. Uh, I want to say Che Guevara.
Okay.
I want to say Ansaldúa because I never, though I've read her books, I've never actually met her. Gloria Ansaldúa. Um, and honestly, man, my grandmother, man. I miss my grandmother, man. And I would love to learn some of those ancestral knowledges that she had that I didn't get to learn because we got disconnected while I was still young, and I lost her even further when I got incarcerated. And the question that I would ask would be, how hopeful are you are for our current condition?
Hmm. How hopeful are you?
I'm very hopeful, man. Despite everything that's going on, bro, um, I take joy in being able to see young people really taking on this mantle of community organizing and activism, you know, whether it be Black Lives Matter. And actually, I got to see this young sister in Little Village speak during the Adam Toledo Healing March. And I wish I could remember her name, but to hear her speak and share her speech with 1,000 plus people, man, and to for her to be that young, it gives me hope because there's power and there's still power in the words that she spoke. Uh, and to see young people that passionate about these issues that are happening lets me know that we're on the right track, man. And that all the work that people like Angela Davis, you know, that people like Malcolm X, you know, I dare say even Harriet Tubman, man, like all these different struggles that have happened throughout our history as people of color, man, like it's still being taken on, and as incremental as these gains have been, man, like we're still fighting. You know what I'm saying? Um, we're still achieving certain things that I never would have thought would happen. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this brother named Ronaldo Hudson um, that I met while I was at Danville. His brother was on death row. Um, the governor at the time commuted that death sentence and gave him natural life. Um, and just currently, Governor Pritzker signed clemency for him to be released. And now this brother's working for an organization that is making it possible for other people that are serving 50, 60 years to come home. That gives me hope. Because if he's able to maintain hope through all that, how can I be hopeful? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what gives me hope, man. And again, to see so many of us, man, sitting in a prison classroom out here together, making real all the conversations that we had. That's what gives me hope, man.
Yeah. With that in mind, what's a mantra or affirmation you want everyone listening to know?
That, and this is gonna be cliche, man. Like today, you're gonna change the world. Or sometimes I even say, man, bro, you're the shit. You know what I'm saying? Like just to feel good about myself, bro. Like for so long, people like us are told we ain't shit. So why not love myself that much to say, you know what, you are the shit, and to be telling people you're the business, bro. Like David, you're the business, bro. You know what I mean? Like that. That's those are the affirmations that I like to share, man. You're the
Yeah.
yeah.
You're going to change the world. You already are, right? Um, who's one person that I should have on this podcast? And you have to connect us and help me get them on. Too late to use Angela Davis, I know, but
Honestly, I think Johnny Page, bro. Johnny Page is a brother um that was woke long before I was. He's currently working for an organization called Contextos, doing memoir writing as a form of processing trauma. And he's one of my greatest mentors. You know, I have many, But this brother's on top of his business, man. And I think another person that I would recommend is um, this this uh, this young woman named Julia Ramirez. Uh,
Oh, she was in that training with
yeah,
you.
yeah, she was.
Yeah.
I think she would be somebody that can really light a fire in this type of space, man, because she's as woke as they come, and she's motivated me to be a better me, bro, for a long time, man.
Hook it up. Johnny Page and Julia. Make it happen, bro, and we'll get them on here to share. So, how the last question is how and where can people support you in your work in the ways you want to be supported?
Man, I think supporting local Chicago restorative justice hubs, man. Um, there are a network of us. I just so happen to be blessed and privileged to work for Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation. I believe in the work, not because it's work, but because it's actually a vocation for many of the people there. Like it's our life responsibility just to be in community and in care of people in our community. Uh, I guess supporting my work, man, I don't have an ask as far as like me myself, because I don't believe that the work I do is ever going to be individual. So if you have ideas on um, how to make policy work better in Illinois as it relates to mass incarceration, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what it is that you feel you need if you are directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And that means families. That means if you're a person with a conviction, uh, yeah, just reach out.
Yeah, and we'll get a link to reach out to you down in the show description. Well, thank you so much, Chile Orlando, for being here. Do you want to say Spanish and I'll say English to close us out?
Sure. En la catch. Tú eres mi otro yo.
You are my other me.
Si te hago daño a ti,
If I do harm to you,
me hago daño a mí mismo.
I do harm to myself.
Si te amo y respeto,
If I love and respect you,
me amo y respeto yo.
I love and respect myself.
That's it.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We'll see you next week.